Welcome to Public Pictures Theater. I'm your host for the evening, Sean Mellor, and today we're joined by three guests who will react to the thrills of House on Haunted Hill throughout the movie. At the end of the movie, we'll have a discussion panel where we talk about it. With such an interesting plot, Public Pictures Theater had to revisit it. Enjoy House on Haunted Hill. Welcome, everybody, to our panel discussion for House on Haunted Hill. Today I'm joined by Patricia Pinson, Tristan West, and Gabby Bonnar. So we're just going to discuss some questions and aspects about the movie. First off, to start, what did you guys think? Did you guys like it?
I liked it. I think I liked it more in the beginning. It was fun trying to figure out what was going on. Like most murder mysteries. As a whole, I think it was a decent movie, especially considering its time.
Yeah, I definitely enjoyed it as well. It's very reminiscent of Clue with Tim Curry, which I have some very fond memories of watching for the first time my freshman year of college, and it was thunderstorming, and it was just the perfect atmosphere for it. So that's what I was thinking of the whole time, and just kind of running that through my head, and I enjoyed it very much. I thought Vincent Price was a great actor. I thought the story was pretty interesting. I just overall enjoyed it.
No, I literally just watched it, so I wasn't winging it during the panel. But I enjoyed it. I know to usually take the PPT movies kind of with a grain of salt because it was made in a time where like those were bigger movies and we have a lot more technology now. So I think it was fun, and I don't usually dislike those movies at all because I do think they're fun, and it's kind of nice to go back to a more, I don't want to say traditional, but more simple plot, and nothing's trying to really jump at you.
Right, I definitely agree. I think that's what this movie did well, is despite it being an older movie, it still felt maybe not as old. It felt maybe almost 80s, kind of. It felt like they could even pull that off, saying that it was from then. And I honestly wouldn't be surprised. But how do you guys think that it worked in horror or thriller? I think it went pretty well. For majority of the movie, I was kind of unsure who did it or what was going to happen next. So I think it did a pretty good job of that.
If I were to classify the movie, the main category I would put it in would be mystery. But between horror and thriller, I think it works better as a thriller because when watching it, it didn't strike me as a horror movie much. There wasn't anything, in your face. It was more suspense and what's coming and who did it. And to me, that's always what a thriller is.
I definitely think it had its moments as a horror movie. I mean, finding the decapitated head in a suitcase definitely has a horror feel to it, but I almost think it would have worked a little bit better if they played more to the ghost aspect of it, because I felt like it just kind of got mentioned at the beginning. It was like, yeah, this place is haunted, and then it didn't really come back. That I think would help it work. I agree with Tristan. I would definitely call it more of a mystery than a horror, but I think if we're going to talk about it as a horror, it does work as a thriller.
Yeah, I definitely think it leans more towards the thriller side rather than horror. There were some horror elements, but and in calling it like a mystery, murder mystery, I don't know how far back like those categories go. I feel like as film modernized, we've created more and more subcategories. So I think if you were to play it today, it'd be that murder mystery kind of category, but I definitely think it leans a lot more towards thriller.
Yeah, I definitely agree with all of you on that. I think at some point maybe we determined that horror movies were going to start including different things than maybe what they did back 60s, 70s, 80s even. I agree that there's some scenes that are just definitively horror. I mean, the whole ghost in the chains, I mean, that was kind of freaky. The decapitated head. It felt like maybe there was a whole movie missing of the first like ghostly encounter, where however many people died. It was like 7 or 8 people died in that house beforehand, and we didn't even see or know about that. I don't know. Give us a prequel. Make a prequel right now. But that leads me to my next question. Did anything feel like maybe it didn't really fit or felt out of place? I thought there were a couple scenes that were just not really out of place, but maybe a little awkward.
At the ending, when it was revealed who actually did it, it just felt like it came out of nowhere. Like the relationship between the psychiatrist and Mrs. Lauren, it felt like there was no build up to that. There was no hints. Like I tried going back and watching it again, and I never saw any hints towards, oh, these two know each other. This is like, bam, these people did it.
I think that's definitely a weakness of this movie, is there's just absolutely no buildup of that relationship. And I think that's something a prequel could do. Maybe you could introduce one of the characters and they get away, or it's a brother or something or whatever. So at what point did all of you start to realize that there wasn't really like any ghosts involved in the movie?
I think for me, it took a long time because it was kind of hard to identify if what was really going on was supernatural stuff, because people like to play off of that all the time. And I was trying to think logically of how the characters were doing what they were doing. If I suspected like this person, how were they getting all the doors to open and shut like that, and whatnot. So it didn't take, I think it took until almost the very end, where I was like, oh, okay, so this entire thing was just the whole, oh, there's a house in the woods, nobody goes there, people died there, so obviously it's haunted. And then playing into that and bringing people here, and in reality, you're just going to murder a whole bunch of people anyway, and there's no ghosts involved whatsoever.
I think for most of the movie, I thought that it was one of the characters doing the murdering, but I thought that the movie was going to pull one of those, old movie cliches where, oh, it was a person doing all the killing, but in the end, we're going to reveal there actually was a ghost the entire time. And pop out and scare someone. But no, that never happened. So, like Gabby, for most of the movie, I thought there was going to be a ghost that popped up at some point.
I was kind of into the whole ghost premise at the very beginning, and then they showed the groundskeepers, and I was like, oh, okay, they're not, it's real people. And it came back a little bit at the end with the skeleton that at that point I thought was Frederick's, and I was like, okay, he's haunting his own skeleton. And then he pulled out the puppet ring, which is, I guess, kind of back to the previous question where I'm like, how, when, where, why, huh?
And so what I started thinking about when I watched the movie was how many steps Frederick had to have setting up every single aspect of this. Is he had the skeleton already, right? Because he had it wired up to a puppet thing. So he had to have it ready and prepared already. The acid pit, he had to have known about it, or else just all of the plan wouldn't work. I don't know. Do you guys think that this ending is maybe in fact more shocking, kind of, that it's almost kind of ridiculous, but do you think it works, the fact that there are no ghosts, and that really the whole plot builds up and ends right there? Like, you pretty much don't know anything until that last 30 some minutes.
I think it works all right. Like I said before, the ending of the movie is where I started to enjoy it a little bit less. It was very Sherlock Holmes like, where, oh, I knew that this was going to happen exactly this way, so I took these steps to do this, and counter. Just like you said, it was all very exact. It's like you had to know that it would all go down in the acid pit room. But, old movie, suspension of disbelief. Taking that into account, I think it works all right. I like the subversion of expectations where there wasn't any ghost.
I think, like Tristan said before, it would work better if my disbelief was suspended a little bit more with the doctor and Annabelle having known each other, because I agree, I felt like it came out of nowhere. So I almost want to go back and watch it again to see if I missed something in that introduction of character roles and whatnot. But that kind of suspended me a little bit there. And then, like I said, with the whole puppet rig of the skeleton, because I couldn't tell if it was supposed to be the doctor's skeleton, if it was just supposed to be a random skeleton that Frederick had for some reason. It all kind of, that part of it didn't make sense to me. And then at the very end, when they just look directly at the camera and go, and they're coming for you next. I was sitting there thinking, who's coming for me? Who is? The killers are dead, and there are no ghosts.
I agree, except I think there was still technically ghosts there. Even though we didn't see them at all, because everything we saw was done by them. But so I wanted to mention about the skeleton. I think, and I'm convinced of it, that entire scene was meant to use this gimmick they made called Emergo, I don't know how it's pronounced. So what they would do at drive-ins and movie theaters when they played this movie, they would have a skeleton tied up to come at you in the theater during that ending. And I think something like that would add a lot to the movie.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but doesn't Phantom of the Opera do something like that on Broadway with the chandelier where it falls into the audience?
Yeah, I believe so. Yeah. I think that's just so cool. Was there any moments that like actually scared you, actually startled you, or actually stood out as a horror scene? Comes to mind the severed head or the ghost chain scene or whatever.
The head was kind of gross. Wouldn't say that it scared me per se, but nothing really popped out at me as being there was like the mini jump scare where the groundskeeper woman was like standing right next to Nora and panned over to her. And
Yeah, I don't think there's anything that really scared me per se. I watch a lot of horror movies with my friend, and historically they've never really, it takes a lot to scare me in a horror movie. And it's usually that like psychological stuff that really gets in your brain and makes you think. So I don't think there was anything that scared me, especially because of the effects of the time. So looking at the head, looking at the first severed head was gross. And the other one that dude just carried around because why not? I think the effects kind of play into that as well, because they don't have the same kind of effect that they have today. But I don't know, I think at the time maybe it would have done something.
Yeah, I agree with Gabby. I'm definitely more of a psychological horror person, so some of it really didn't bother me just because I guess gore in that sense, as much as it was gory, it doesn't get to me. I mean, I did like the head. That was pretty creepy, and I personally, if I had opened my suitcase to find a decapitated head of somebody that had been dead for a while, I think I would have just closed my suitcase and told everyone, you can keep my things, you can keep my $10,000. I'm going home. I'm just gonna go home.
Yeah, I think at that point I'd probably just leave. But I was gonna say I think the only thing that really, like you guys, I wasn't really scared. I wasn't really frightened by anything. But one of the most shocking things to me is always whenever characters will like turn a corner and you'll just see the body still hanging there, still moving, of somebody who's like either been hung or hung themselves. Hanged, I think it's hanged. But that kind of scene is just still a little always shocking whenever I see it. Somebody goes around the corner and you see legs and you're like, oh, imagine seeing that in real life. If you could remake, redo, update, make a sequel, make a prequel, what would you add? What would you make sure that you would fix? What would you, I mean, we talked a little about maybe including a little bit more of the relationship between the doctor and Frederick's wife. Can't remember her name. It's unfortunate, but what would you guys change or keep or remove?
It would probably be longer since movies we make today tend to be longer than older ones. Maybe you spend a little bit more time showing. I can't remember Vincent Price's character. I always think of him as just Vincent Price. Showing him to be a little more cunning, so that way it's a little bit more believable that he had everything set up the way he did. And just spend a little more time showing him versus his wife and making them seem a little more intelligent.
I think I would change up the ending. I don't know that I was satisfied to the point where she was still alive and they were about to like double cross everybody, and I think that was a great twist. I think the idea that he knew about all of this and then he was like crossing them who they were already trying to cross everybody, I think that was a little much. So I like having an outside character. I think if she would have crossed that doctor guy and been like, I'm gonna work with you up until this point, and then I'm just gonna, throw you in the acid pit or whatever. I think that might have worked well. I also, and you're gonna see it in my reaction. I also kind of wanted everybody to end up in the acid pool and have it just the house remain that mystery house, haunted house that sits there, and you go in, you don't come out. I think that would have been interesting. Or having Pritchard survive again, to go on and be like, hey, I survived twice, but nobody else did. So I think either one of those might have made for a little more, not necessarily interesting, but more comprehensive ending.
I think for me, especially because the whole premise was you'll get $10,000 for surviving the night, I didn't feel like there was a whole lot of threat throughout the whole point. I think I would have played up the aspect of, oh, I've invited you here so we can murder each other, or like, I've invited you here and there are these malicious ghosts, or that there are actually traps within the house. I would go back and play that up. I think also just the idea of having a party solely for the purpose of murdering your husband and getting away with the man you're cheating with seems a little, I guess, I feel like Annabelle wouldn't be as put together and maybe would have reveled in the whole aspect of that more. So I feel like I would have played with her character and maybe toned up a little bit more of the I want you dead and I'll kill anyone who gets in my way portion of it. Because I just otherwise felt like it was very passive of like, yeah, okay, I'll pretend to be dead the whole time and then boo, I'm not dead.
Yeah, I again agree completely all around. There's so many things you could have done that would have made just a little bit more sense, or a little bit more of a brought together movie, if that makes sense. Like playing more with emotions, I think would be really cool. We don't even know, like, I don't even remember some of the names of some of the older lady. It's absolutely no purpose as a character. Didn't add anything to being there. And it's like, all right, cool. Of course, there's some characters in movies that are going to be not really doing anything. But I don't know, like one or two people maybe you could have accidentally gotten killed in the hijinks of them trying to kill each other. There's so much you could have done. I think that being said, it's still a good movie. It's still fun to watch, but maybe they could have added more. Would you have gone to the house for $10,000? Now, this is before you watch the movie, so assume. Well, I guess you can assume it's haunted because they didn't know it was haunted. But I don't know. Pretend you knew it was haunted, but it's not actually maybe haunted.
Yeah, so if we're going off of the assumption before the movie, 100% would have gone. Because I do believe in ghosts, but I don't necessarily believe that they always have to be malintended. So if it was just simply sleep in a spoopy mansion, get free $10,000, I would have been the first at the door, been like, I am broke. Please give me money just for sleeping here. That is fine by me.
I would absolutely go 100% before and after watching the movie. I could just hole up in my room. Take one. I'm good.
That seemed to be an option really only Nora chose.
If it were like heralded as this spooky mansion, I don't know that I would have gone. I don't know that I do have student loans, so $10,000 does sound really nice if I just have to survive the night in a mansion. But I think I'm a little bit too paranoid about what's around the corner, and I don't like even if those ghosts were not malintended, we're kind of just there to mess with people. I'm not here to mess with things that I don't know about. So I'd probably, unless I knew somebody else that was going, I probably wouldn't go. After the movie, I think maybe I would go, knowing kind of what's going on. Just maybe I'd hole up in the cellar near the acid pit, and then you have that protection. I just got to be careful not to fall in it myself.
Just be ready. If any ghosts come, you're gonna push them immediately into the acid pit. You're fine. Well,
Would you go for $10,000?
if I before the movie, probably yes, because $10,000 is just too much for me to be able to like do stuff with to not consider it. After the movie, 100%, because it seems like to me the whole plot of it almost is Vincent Price bribing people not to tell others that he killed his wife in this house and the person she was having an affair with, whom they don't even see have an affair. So they just have to take at face value. Actually, maybe after the movie, maybe not. I don't know. It seems like some guy just murdered two people and is trying to convince you not to do anything about it.
$10,000.
You've also got to think about inflation and like how much was $10,000 worth now versus then. So like, how much money are we really talking about here?
But so now to the final question, kind of to wrap everything together. What do you think the characters really do after this? What's the next step? They all just go home, go to sleep?
I think Richard Watson keeps being a paranoid, crazy guy who obsesses over the house, is my immediate thought. And like you said, they're kind of taking his word that there was an affair going on, so Vincent Price probably just went to jail. And everyone else just took their money and went on their happy way. That's my theory.
I think Lance and Nora are off in a relationship somewhere because that was kind of developing throughout the movie. I think the lady her name was Mrs. Bridges, and she worked for the local paper. So I think she probably wrote an interesting article after this. Obviously, fudging a few of the details if she wants to keep her $10,000 and stay out of jail. But yeah, I think they're kind of just going about their lives, and maybe they've like packed those memories into a little box and shoved them in the back of their brain so they don't have to think about them.
I mean, I completely forgot that Mrs. Bridges was a news reporter, so now I'm even thinking about that could be an interesting framing device if you wanted to start it again, so that now I'm thinking it does get reported, and in the sense of that framing device, everybody that's alive comes back and reports on it, and then, where do you go from there? Truth be told, if I was a character in that movie, I think my next step would be get my money and go to therapy.
Yeah, I think it's definitely an interesting question what really goes on after, because that ending scene is just literally Vincent Price going, I'm fully like fine with letting the law do what it has to do, and then just walks away. And like, I don't know, I love the whole thought of a scene after that with just all of them standing there in the basement, kind of like watching him walk away and like just wondering what's going, like, oh my God, I don't know, he just killed two people in this pit of acid, and he said we'd get $10,000 and we didn't get it. There's just so many, all right, where do we go from here? The news, Mrs. Bridges, I don't know. I think it'd be really interesting to see a remake, a prequel, a sequel, anything. They actually did make two. I think it's a remake, but it is not the same. It is not the same at all. I think it's a lot more horror based. I think there's a lot more ghosts and things involved. It's a more modern 1999 and 2007. And they even rumored to start another one in 2017. It's past that a little bit. Haven't gotten it yet. But all in all, I think it's an interesting film. I think it's fun to talk about films like this because it is so over the top. But well, thank you everyone for joining us watching House on Haunted Hill on another episode of Public Pictures Theater. Special thanks to Patricia Pinson, Gabby Bonnar, and Tristan West for joining me through the entire movie panel. Be sure to watch other Public Pictures Theater episodes on IEP TV and our YouTube channel. Thank you, everybody.